Welcome, everyone. My name is Neil with Portal to Ascension. Thank you all so much for being with us right here, right now, today. And today we're going to be talking about UFO disclosure and specifically what's been going on with the disclosure recently from the Department of Defense, ex-military, ex-CIA, Tom DeLonge. And we've had a few, we're going to keep the conversation going. We've had a few conversations about this last week. We did 5 hours in one day of interviews with Ray Hernandez, Steve Bassett, Grant Cameron, and all that stuff's on our YouTube, youtube.com/portal to ascension. And we also did one with Paula Harris. So the intention for this is to keep the conversation going about exactly what is happening. And it seems like the rabbit hole is way deeper than most may realize, and that there's a lot of weird occurrences happening now coming to the surface in regards to this whole UFO disclosure story. So today is more of a discussion where two of my really good friends, Omar and Leo, are going to both come on and have a conversation with me about what their perspective is and what we can expect in the coming months, in the coming year. And also, if at any moment anybody wants to share their own perspective in the audience, this is going to be an open forum discussion where, as long as you have a webcam and a microphone, everything should work out. You can raise your hand or make a notification in the chat box and let us know. And then after we've had a conversation for about 30, 40 minutes, we're going to start bringing people on, and you guys can share your perspectives as well and jump in on the conversation. We have gone live on Facebook, on Portal to Ascension's Facebook, facebook.com/Portal to Ascension. Please feel free to go there. You can listen to it there. You can share it with your friends as well. So let's get into the conversation. So I'm going to bring on my buddies here. You guys with me?
Yeah, I'm here, buddy.
Yeah, I'm here, bro.
Awesome.
Thanks
welcome, guys.
thanks for inviting me. Much
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. So, okay, we were having a little conversation before this because we got really excited about everything that's happening. You know, this is a really interesting story, and like it's kind of blowing my mind. You know, I've always wanted disclosure to happen, but now that it's like happening on some level, whether it's like has this alternate agenda or if it's something that's actually genuine, it's still blowing my mind because I'd really, on some level, didn't feel that it was going to happen too. You know what I mean? Because especially coming from the top down, like it would have to be a grassroots movement. So, well, let's start with you, brother Leo, and tell me your perspective, and then Omar, you can jump in afterwards.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be here. You know, when we've talked on camera, off camera, on my show, Omar's show, we talk about the stuff. You know, it's the biggest thing right now that's going on in the world is disclosure. Everybody wants disclosure. The whole world wants disclosure. You know, in other countries, the governments have already come out and they've said things to people and told them that that aliens existed, but you know, the American government still denies anything. Well, you know, in the news recently, the American government just admitted that they had an ongoing investigation that they paid millions for, that they literally just stopped and canceled. I think it was in 2008. I'm not exactly sure that date, but it was very, very not too long ago. Okay, so for all this time since the beginning of this whole thing, when, you know, in the 40s, you know, in the 30s, they've been saying that the UFOs don't exist and everything that they investigate says nil. And we all know that that's different. We all know that that's a lie. We all know that that's disinformation. So the question has always been disclosure. This is what this is about. And it's very exciting because we know what's going on. Those of us who are in the know, we have figured it all out, and we know. We can't prove it because no one will admit it, okay? It's the same thing. If we were to try this case in a court of law, the American government would be found guilty and would be doing life in prison. Okay, if it was murder and we had the evidence that we have now, that we all know, it would be cut and dry. They would be guilty. Okay, so the fact is, with the evidence that we have, aliens exist. There's people out there that still don't want to believe that, but it's getting to the point now where the government is getting absurd with their death throes of trying to hide this and pretend. And there's a lot of other things that we're going to get into, and I'm not going to start getting into right now because we'll get into that as Omar's talking and as Neil's talking. We'll go back and forth because Neil and I were just off camera talking about it. He was like, wait, we can talk about that on air. So I won't get into that right this second because we'll go down that rabbit hole as we go. Okay, so we know that the only true way that there's going to be any kind of disclosure is us. We're going to have to know what we know, utilize what we know, utilize the things that, like Dr. Stephen Greer did and the ancient Indians did, the Hindus, with meditating and ascent. This is the purpose of Portal to Ascension. This is the purpose to Orion Rising. This is the purpose to Omar's Watchers. We have to ascend to the point where we can get communication with the aliens and the government can't stop us. We know that it's happened in the past. We know of people that have done exactly that. We know of people that are doing that today. So I'm just going to stop there because I got other guests. I'm not here to grandstand. So let's go with the, let's get back into Neil and have Omar come in and we'll just run from that and we'll run down the rabbit hole as the day goes.
Yeah, brother Omar, go ahead.
I am, when I first heard about this story, it was actually from you, Neil. And we came on my show and we talked about this for about an hour or so. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I saw you talking on Orion Rising. And that was the first time I was exposed to this disclosure. And at first I was pretty skeptical, as to why this is happening now. But the thing that really raised my flags on this was the fact that the video that they'd put out was 14 years old. And that ET that had been here, that this F-14 or F-16 was chasing, he's already been come and gone a long time ago. And, I don't remember where I was 14 years ago. So, so for me, this footage is a little suspicious and it throws the flags up. It's a very legitimate footage. But I've been listening to Grant Cameron as well and a lot of other talk panels on this. And, the key thing here to me, I'm thinking, is that it's not disclosure that these guys are after, it's money. Everything has to do with money here. That's my thought. And then, I'll go deeper into this as the conversation goes on.
Yeah, I think there's money for sure when it comes to the Stars Academy, and them raising money for technology that might have already been created. And from Tom DeLonge's other videos, like the one with Joe Rogan, they are actually already created. So there's a money aspect, but then there's also the military aspect of it all. So the biggest question is, and I said this in the last webinar, I'm like an extreme optimist, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to, no matter what, everything's working for the light, this is right. We're going to end up, even if the darkness does what the darkness does, we'll end up where we need to be, which is an ascended world.
Yes.
So even though this is coming out right now, I'm just really curious at the fact that all these people are from the military and that they literally, it's like textbook. Oh, I left my job 2 days ago because really it comes down to the fact that I cannot be a part of a private corporation while working for the government and I need to show some distance. So I left the job, and the flaw in what they did was they just left 2 days ago. It was like almost like, oh, I left and now I can do this,
Yeah,
yeah. And then the videos released are videos that were actually released and declassified by the Department of Defense. However, the Luis dude is saying on all the networks that he put in his resignation notice, they didn't know what he was doing, and he took this stuff and he's releasing it. So we know that the Department of Defense cleared it for release. However, the voice is saying that he did this against the Department of Defense's will. So it's like, what is the true agenda? Because there's way too many inconsistencies in this whole thing.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I actually received an email I'm on an email thread with a couple of CIA officials that are ex-CIA officials and with Grant Cameron and a few other people. And when any of this stuff happens, I'm on the email thread and I see what happened. So he just emailed me today saying UFO story cracks form. And the cracks have begun to appear. Ron Pandolfi at the CIA, who told two people, thank Donald Trump, has been pointing out that To the Stars video was disinfo from the hours after it first appeared. He later added about the fake audio. Wouldn't this be a funny way for Trump to disclose, while at the same time taking down the New York Times, Washington Post, and Politico, who he thinks has been picking on him for the last year? So it's like what he's saying, the CIA operatives are saying, is that the whole video was faked and even the audio was faked, which brings up the question of, so they're telling us extraterrestrials exist and they're showing us videos, but these videos might not actually be extraterrestrial footage. It might actually just be some advanced craft that they've created.
Right. And who's to say? This is like we were talking about earlier off air. It's just all crazy. The stuff that's happening right now seems to be. Now I know a lot of it may be that he is shaking up things in Washington as being sort of a renegade because they can't buy him off. He doesn't need the money. So there may be a possibility that that's part of it because he does want alien disclosure. You know that. He said that before. So, maybe he's able to get a wedge in there in a place and scaring people. And this whole shakeup, with him draining the swamp, You know, maybe the whole thing's kind of scaring some of these black ops guys. Like you said, they're jumping ship to go private, and then they're coming out, you know, I don't work for the government anymore, so this is what's going on. So, you know, who knows? Maybe that's real, and maybe it's all just this last-ditch effort to try and throw some more disinformation out there. We don't know, but either way, it's something worth looking at, right?
Yeah, I think this is the typical government play maneuver that they're doing. First, they're going to release footage, and then to confuse the public and come out later and say, "Oh, well, you know, this was a hoax. This was fake. This was fake." So, you know, to me, it's kind of halfway for me, because these guys have already released footage. It looks, you know, it looks pretty legitimate to me. And, you know, if the audio is fake, it's not, you know, I'm not sure. I'm not, you know, I'm not an analysis person, so I'm not really sure. But the one thing that I can say from my own experience is that when the government releases something and then they come back out, you know, a day or so later and say, "Oh, no, 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 that was a hoax. That was, you know, it was garbage. It was bullshit, blah, blah, blah." That's because they're trying to confuse the people, because they really, these guys don't want a full disclosure.
Right.
They want money. And, you know, and like Neil was saying earlier, it's the military-industrial complex that's looking for this money, and the best place to find money is in defense, as Grant Cameron was saying. Mm-hmm. So that's what these guys are going to do. They're going to try to make this Black Ops false flag operation and say that, oh, you know, these ETs are coming in from all over the place, and they're going to attack us, and we need to bind together, and we need money to defend ourselves. So this goes back to the old Ronald Reagan thing, right? The Star Defense thing, and it's been ever since then. It's
Star Wars, and what he said in front of the UN.
That's right, and this has been just slowly progressing on that very same thing. Whether Ronald Reagan was right or wrong, you know, who knows? But to me, you know, the way I see it is that if you have any interstellar traveling species that are going to come from way out there, there is nothing that they're going to want or need from us. The only thing that they need from us is peace and cooperation. That's it. You know, these guys are highly advanced, and if they wanted to destroy us, they don't need to come into our planet. They can just bombard us from orbit, or you know, or
fold it in.
That's right, or release some sort of an influenza or some sort of a bug in our atmosphere that would make everybody sick. The infrastructure would stand and the people would be gone. So, you know, to me, this is all fear-mongering and the drumbeats of war. And this is, you know, like I said earlier, this is, my flags went up the moment I saw that. I was like, okay, well, 14 years old, you know, this a part of a soft disclosure, which is fine. You know, the government's not just going to come out with, you know, bang in your face, you know, we're working with ETs and here they are. Of course, they're not going to do that. But the thing that I was thinking, that maybe they could have released footage that was from a month ago, you know, or from a year ago at least. But we're dealing with a footage here that's like almost 2 decades old.
Right.
So, you know, for that, my alarms go up.
And it's interesting because they did say that they're going to be releasing a bunch of videos, HD quality videos, not these. Tom DeLonge said in his live stream that none of these basically crappy, fuzzy, blurry videos of UFOs, that they're going to release like some real hardcore HD quality stuff. And a lot of people were saying that what he says he's going to do, he's not going to do. However, for the last 2 months, everything he said he's going to do, he did. Everything. Like, I'm going to do this next, I'm going to do this next. And then he even said every word was planned ahead of time. So it's like, let me finish with this thought before getting to you, brother. That so if that's the case, that all of this was planned and orchestrated from the beginning, it's like truly what is the end game? What is their connection? Because the cat is already out of the bag. They've already told everybody that the government believes that ETs exist and these UFOs are manned by non-terrestrial beings. But what the words were, that it is not anything domestic or anything foreign in anybody's inventory that we know of. And then they asked him again, you know, what does that mean? And he goes, well, in my professional opinion, we are not alone. Boom. Right.
That was the pilot.
So no, that was the Luis Elizondo, whatever his last name is, the guy that was on the board for the To the Stars Academy, that went on all the newscasts and did the interview about saying he was the guy on the 5th floor in the Pentagon that was in charge of identifying unidentified aerial threats, right? So it's like they put that out of the bag. So now what's the next step? Like they have the metal alloys, right? And they said that they have metal alloys that are not from this planet. So aren't people like you and I or just some organization going to be like, hey, can we study these alloys, and shouldn't that become public? Like, would that be the next step? You know?
Well, see, I agree with that. And see, I also sort of want to pander to what Dr. Stephen Greer covered with this false flag alien invasion. I think that twofold. I think that in one respect, like we had talked about on one of the shows, it might have been Omar's show, it might have been my show, I don't remember because I've done so much of this lately, that in the end they want to be able to say, well, we were trying to tell you that aliens really did exist the whole time, you just weren't realizing that we were saying it. Right. I think we're trying to say that aliens exist because they need them to exist for the same reason that Dr. Greer said. They need to show us aliens exist so that they can roll out this fake alien invasion, which is really us doing that to ourselves so that they can get rid of all the governments and have one world government. And this is what the plan, if you watch what Stephen Greer talked about, Dr. Stephen Greer talked about on the movie that he released that you guys promoted with him and then toured with him, what he talked about then, which, you know, sounded like we talked about, weren't quite sure we believed that, but now everything he said that was going to happen between then and now is happening between then and now. So them coming out and saying aliens exist, they would have to at this point because the rest of the world knows it. But the only way that their plan can work, if in fact there is a plan, if in fact there is a mock alien invasion, to get rid of all the governments, to break those down and have one world government, like we heard people saying before, right? New world order, right? The only way that can happen is they have to first say, here's definitive proof, yes, you guys are right, aliens do exist, and then, oh no, here they come to come get us.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, right?
And I feel that might be the agenda, but I feel it's going to play out in a way where they've let people know ETs exist. The veil is lifting between the connection between us and extraterrestrials because ETs don't want to just land here. They're going to scare us. A lot of people don't even know that they're real, and they just have them as a belief. So having this awareness out there and now having these like documents that prove the consciousness, basically, that like, and literally prove consciousness, like the CIA documents, they go into some hardcore stuff about Atlantis, ancient Mars, and all this stuff, right?
Right.
So it's like everything has now been connected. Dude, Tom DeLonge said that the government believes that an advanced race of beings from ancient Atlantis are here spearheading our consciousness in cycles. That's what he said, like, as a representative of the government. So I feel that what's going to happen is that they put it out at Christmas for a reason, because a lot of people aren't at home watching it. And a lot of people like us, like light workers that are doing this work, we're not even focused on it because we're consumed with the holiday season. People that I work with hardcore didn't even know about this stuff because they're so busy with the holiday season. And it's like a lot of people don't even know what's going on because they put it out right now. So it works out perfectly. It's not going to go too viral where people are going to go crazy. It's going to be put out there. But when extraterrestrial visitations do occur and people are like, why didn't you tell us? They can be like, hey, it's on CNN.
Right? Hey, it's on CNN, bro. Everybody knows about it. See, and it's the truth there. Right now, it's the most busy time of year. And I don't remember, someone just said this. I think it might have been Jeffrey when we were talking. Someone just said they're going to release a bunch of this stuff coming up right now because all of us are distracted and everybody's distracted with the holidays. And then in the end, they can say, look, we told you about it back in December. Don't you remember? Here's the stuff we said. We brought it all to your attention. And everybody's no one's paying attention. And like you said, I didn't even know about half of this until just the other day. And then, I was telling you stuff off air. You were like, what? I never heard of that. Right. So it's just a matter of what we've picked up because we've all been off. Most of us haven't been doing any shows for the last few days. I haven't. I had a show last week and that was it. And, so I wasn't even watching the news today. I watched it for like 5 minutes and said enough of the cartoons. And I've been on my computer since then. So it's the perfect time. And they're just throwing it out there. And the really scary thing is, guys, is all the stuff that we thought and all the stuff that we said with our investigation, like you just said, now the CIA is coming out and saying that there are people that are still here from the Atlantean race and that they are helping us spiritually. We all talked about that a month ago, that we believed that through our investigations over the last 20 years of all of us investigating this stuff. So the stuff that we have believed and said it was proof to the world, when everyone said, show me proof, we kept saying it's right here. How many pictures do we need to show you? How many wall cave cave paintings do you need to know? How many different scripts from around the world saying aliens came from outer space do you need in history to believe that all of that happened, right? So we've been saying all that, now all of a sudden it's pumping out there to the world, and everybody in the entire world is going, oh wow, now look, there's aliens. Well, we knew about that.
It's crazy because like right now, if you type in UFO disclosure in Google, which I do every month once just to see who's out there, and the first site is CNN, right? And these guys have not been reporting on UFO disclosure enough in order to rank number one, which goes to show you that everything is bought out. The internet searches, everything. As soon as we want to release a UFO disclosure article, Google probably got them a speed dial, like, hey, put us up number one, you know? So it's like, this whole thing is so orchestrated and it's done to a T and it's done so well that it's difficult to really it's a catch-22 really, you know? It's difficult to break free from it and see exactly what's going on, so we can only speculate. And it's what we're doing now, having these events. Like, I never do events past the second week or first week in December. Right. And the only reason I'm doing these events now is because no one's talking about this on the mass level. And there is a lot of different perspectives out there and a lot of videos and things that I don't even know because there's so many pieces to the puzzle, right?
Well, I think that's a lot of it. I mean, Omar said it just, at the beginning of the show, at the top of the show, that a lot of it is a flood of information and disinformation at the same time. And they'll go one day and say one thing and the next day say something else, just like they did when they said, oh, we found a UFO in the field over here at, in New Mexico. And then the next day they went, oh, no, that was just a water or air balloon. And then the next day they said, no, it was us testing with monkeys. No, it was us testing with dummies and robots. And so they have a different story every day. And it's the same thing is going to happen now. You got these guys, who knows, maybe they're really whistleblowers and they're coming out with stuff. I mean, we've seen it. We've had it on your show. We've had them on my show. These guys before they died who were working in Skunk Works and Lockheed and Morton, all these guys that worked for Skunk Works at the time. And they're all old and they're all dying now. And they came out and said, look, I own 20 patents and here's a real UFO. Here's our UFO that we built. And here's one from the aliens. So these guys who are in the know for 50, 60, 70 years have been coming out and telling the world this stuff exists all the time. But for some reason, it's in everybody's mind that the only way it can be real is that the formal government of the United States, which is weird because who would it be? Would it be the president who would come out and say they're real? Are we waiting for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs? Who exactly is supposed to come out to us and say UFOs do exist for us as Americans who believe UFOs would accept it? Which person would it be? Would it be Hillary Clinton? Yeah. Well, we know that Greer lied to them when he was vetted in, and him and his wife said, are aliens real? And he just got done talking to an alien, walked out to her and said, no, they're not. And he says it and he admits that. So his word's not good enough. Your word's not good enough. My word's not good enough. Johnson's word wasn't good enough. Whose word, America? Whose word, world, do you need to hear for you to actually say, oh, all right, then aliens exist?
That's because the reason why people don't want to believe that that extraterrestrials exist is simply for one reason. Like you're mentioning, Leo, that you need the president or somebody to come out and tell the people. That's because we are under the influence of authoritarianship. We're not going to take the word of just anybody. A high-ranking official needs to come out and say, okay, well, this is true and this is happening. And then that's when everyone will jump onto the old bandwagon. But as long as people like us and Dr. Greer and everyone that's involved, we can keep beating those drums all we want. But because of the mindset of the people, not only in America and in Canada and Europe, but in fact all over the world, is because we're under that authoritarian mindset to where, we're only going to believe our teachers, our priests, our doctors, politicians, the police chief, or somebody in a high position like that. And that's the only reason why we don't, people don't take things serious when guys like Neil or you or myself, when we have these types of discussions.
Yeah, I agree with you completely on that one. And, a lot of people say that, like, oh, we don't need our governments to tell us. But guess what? Those are the people that are awake.
That's right.
Exactly. Those are the ones that are awake.
Awake people hang out with awake people, and you get caught in a bubble and you think the world's changing. But then when you step outside and you realize, whoa, wait a second, a lot of things are actually kind of backwards. And other people, maybe us, because we know that these authority figures, we've gone through our karma with them and we've transcended that. But other people really need that hierarchy to tell them the truth, because that's the only place that they'll get it from. So that's why I feel it's important on both levels, because I always felt it might start from the top, but then it will end from the bottom up, you know?
That's right,
And I think that's what's happening right now, because the information is coming out from the top, and now at the grassroots level, it's empowering us even more. And I'm more motivated than anything. The plans that we have for this next year is just insane, you know? Like, so I'm really like gonna like kind of round the troops up, you know, and tell them what's going on when it comes to consciousness, spirituality, and the galactic connection to these extraterrestrial beings, you know, and our, you know, a past life connection to them, because it's truly about that. It's not about like the nuts and bolts and about these craft and how we can, you know, weaponize space. That's not it.
Let me just interject here for 1 minute here, go back for a couple of minutes when you're talking about the alloy that they have that's off-world. And when will we have access to that? It's like all things that have come pretty much from World War I and on, where the military has had the application first, and then once they're done with it, that's when it gets released to the public. So I'm thinking that this alloy that they have, they're going to use it in the military complex, and then once they've used it and are done with it, and at that time, I think it's going to be released to the public. The perfect example is the microwave. And, you know, the military had the microwave for a long time, and then it wasn't released to the public until like late 70s, early 80s, and they sat on that technology for 20, 25 years.
Yep, absolutely. But they do that with a lot of technology. You know,
That's
if you look back, I remember reading, what's his name, Bud Hopkins' books, and I referred to this on one of my shows. He wrote books back in the 70s and the 80s where he was an investigator. He was actually a hypnotist that was using hypnosis to help people therapy-wise, and went down the rabbit hole of, just like you saw in the movie The Fourth Kind. The basis of what happened in that movie, The Fourth Kind, happened to him in real life, where he went down a rabbit hole where people were having problems sleeping, and the next thing you know, there was something happening to them, and he was like, describe what's happening, and then he started to realize they were all having episodes that were kind of similar, and he started writing that down and wasn't telling anybody about it, and eventually became the forefront of alien investigation through hypnosis. And so he wrote books about it, and in that, at the time, they were talking about procedures that were being done on women that at the time we were not doing, and up to and including when we go to check on the fetus, they take this long needle and insert it through the belly button into the area where the fetus is, and check the fluid levels there and check all kinds of stuff. At that time was in the 60s and 70s. We didn't have that invention in the United States with doctors using that until the 80s. So we were looking at 15 to 20 years prior to an invention of a device that women were describing, the device that was being used on them. So whether that was us doing that to our own people and abducting them, because Dr. Stephen Greer does talk about how most of the abductions that happen these days are not aliens, they're in fact our own people posing as aliens doing that so that they can do DNA testing on us without getting caught, because we're seeing what we think is aliens doing it to us, and some of them may be aliens doing it to us. I don't know the answer to that question. I just believe that it's happening. I believe it's happened to me. So, but there's technology that's being seen here prior to. Now, is that because we reverse engineered it, we bargained for it, or like Omar said, we got it from them, reverse engineered it and sat on it for a while because they can make money off of it? Just like Neil said, everything's about money. We talked about this before, there's no money in the cure. There's only money and sustainability. So the technology is the most important thing to any government, because the sustainability of that technology, and if they own it and then they can use it and they can sell it, money.
Well, prime example is when the Wright brothers created the aircraft. That aircraft wasn't available to the public. We still had to use ships to go back and forth across the Atlantic, but yet the military all of a sudden had all these aircrafts. So once they had mastered the technology of the aircraft from the Wright brothers, and it was at that time they realized that, hey, we can make money off of this, and then they released it to the public, to private corporations. Like if you and I wanted to build an airplane and take it to the airport and go for a fly in it, they're not going to let us. They're going to be, no, you need to have a license, you need to do this, you need to do this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Try to put as many roadblocks in front of us as possible. But yet when it comes to a private corporation, they're willing to give that technology to them because they're getting kickbacks from it, royalties and such. I find it all suspicious because we have this $22 trillion in the United States that all of a sudden is missing. And then now this disclosure comes up, you know, and it was the same thing back at 9/11 where, you know, $500 billion disappeared and the 9/11 happened. So it's kind of strange to me as, you know, how this information comes out when revelations of missing money is connected and tied with that. So
well, right, and you know, supposedly the records of where that money was there in that building that got destroyed during 9/11. So they were going to conduct an investigation to find out where that money went. Oh, then all of a sudden it got wrecked, and the whole building went down. There was no more records to show where that money went, and then they just kind of wrote it off. You know, well, wrote it off in the fact that it was missing, but we here in the United States who are slaves to that debt still owe that debt. So, well, who cares? You guys still owe it. Yeah. Right? Isn't that just horrible, guys? And see, that goes to the whole corruption, you guys, in banking industry, and that's another rabbit hole we'll go down another time because we're talking about disclosure here today. But it's all encompassing, and you guys need to understand that, including what we're talking about with Ascension, where Neil and I always joke about that because he said that on my show one time. You know, where we're going aliens, aliens, aliens. Now go meditate. You know, and you guys are going, what? What does that have to do with anything? Well, it's all has to do with everything now.
Everything. It's all connected.
We're starting to realize that.
So right, exactly.
Conditioning.
That's why. So we exist to funnel the consciousness into this realm of ufology. So now we're talking about technology. My question is, like, ever since I've been doing this work, a lot of people have been saying to me, like, oh, you think the ETs use nuts and bolts UFOs to get here? Like, they don't use that. They use light ships, Merkabas. They travel, like, interstellarly through wormholes. So, but the jury's still out on whether there are actual extraterrestrial beings that actually do use nuts and bolts UFOs, as well as interstellar and different types of technologies.
Why wouldn't there be all that?
That's right. I was just going to say that.
The universe is very vast and has been around a long time. Why wouldn't there be people in different stages of development? Omar and I have talked about
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, Omar and I have talked about this where back in history, these aliens that came down were using rockets to leave and enter our atmosphere like we are now.
Right.
These people were clearly from outer space. And then there's people who don't use those. So I would suggest, just like you're saying, there's a wide range of aliens. Some of them got here in their puddle jumpers, but can't just barely making it. Other ones came from a light source in another universe. Winked in, hi, here we are, and they're angelic, things. So I think they're all across the board. I would say if you're gonna first of all believe that the universe is as old as it is, you also have to believe that there's going to be people that are going to be from day one existed, and some people in every aspect from that point all the way down to us and barbarians. So why wouldn't you have people here? It's just like if you go to any port in the world, you're going to find people limping in, flying in, beaming in, coming in. And
so from my research and experiences, there's countless different extraterrestrial races really interacting with us that have some sort of connection to us, that even in the non-physical around us all the time, there's all types of things. I wouldn't doubt if there's like a little like mantis being using some sort of technology to like cipher some energy from me right now, there's literally a lot going on, and we're such in this limited bandwidth frequency that we're not able to perceive it, So hopefully these things like disclosure from the top down that people need will just create a spark in their consciousness where they're now open to other things. Because I feel that one of the biggest things that's going to come out of this, if this happened on a mass level, would be organized religion would have to be redefined.
That's one of the reasons why they want to cover it up, I think. Go ahead, Omar. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think, my thoughts on religion and disclosure, to me, I'm thinking that that nothing's really going to change with any organized religion like Islam, Sikhism, Christianity, Judaism. Nothing's going to change because people's faith is their faith. They can't see God, but yet they believe in it. So if they have belief in God, then they must understand that we're not the only ones that were created, that God would have gone out and created others. So in my opinion, I don't think it should make, it should have any effects on any religion or any mayhem or chaos of any kind. If there's going to be mayhem and chaos, then that's going to be government created. So that all the attention is deflected off the actual issue, and then they go to the current riots and kind of what have you that's happening. Like here in Vancouver, a bunch of years ago, the Vancouver Canucks they lost the Stanley Cup. Now instead of focusing on building for the next year, all they focused on was the riots that were happening, and the next year it was the same team. Right. So, so I think the same thing's going to happen. It'll be government created. I don't think people's faith would be affected. Like myself, I believe in a God energy.
Yeah.
And then for me, I believe that we're not the only ones that are created, that this all supreme being would have created other beings along to fill the universe with life.
I feel it can go a couple of different ways, because there's a lot of rational, logical people that are just into religion, just religious, right? And those people on the borderline of like facts and rationality may have to change their perspectives when they realize that, their religion wasn't encompassing this, or might even demonize the extraterrestrials that are coming. And then also, if these ETs come down and then with them comes the higher wisdom knowledge, because they're higher dimensional, there can be a whole different realm of consciousness that is open to us, or stories that they tell us. And then thirdly, if we get to know our true ancient history through the connection of extraterrestrials, and we realize how we came to this planet and how we were altered with our DNA, that's going to have to rock some people's awareness. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That would be a game changer, because so far people think that, we're only 6,000 or 7,000 years old, maximum 12,000 years old. So when they find out that, we're hundreds of millions of years old, then I'm sure that's going to have some sort of an effect on their way of thinking.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting, but I'm with you. Like, I don't want to believe that it's going to be hardcore chaos. I feel that there may be like a turmoil in the beginning while we're going through a transition phase, but I think the contingency plan of conscious reality is already set in place, and we're just waiting for the moment for that to really.
Well, the way I talk about it in my groups, the spiritual groups, and I let people know is, and this is the growing consciousness. And for me, this goes back more than 25 years, when guys like me were already thinking like I'm thinking now back then. Okay. And because I was, I'm 17, 18 years old, and I was already doing that. So when I was in my mid 20s, this is the way of thinking that we have, and that we're telling people that I believe will happen. Is you have those people, like you said, we tell everybody that everyone walks their own path to ascension in their own journey in life. So some people are not ready to go, like you said, they're very spiritual, and they're following the different churches, and that's what they need to have. They need that structure, they need that box to feel good in, to feel safe and be able to go to sleep at night. And then there's some of us who have broken that conditioning, and we see the universe for what it is, and we understand what's happening. So what I think is going to happen is it's akin to that Christian moment where they talk about the rapture, only it's not going to be the Left Behind series. That's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is those of us like you and I and Omar and all of us that are working in this industry, that are all working together, we're getting the word out, and we're getting the information out to people, and people are starting to remember who they are. And with our guidance, they're starting to figure out what's going on. They're already questioning. That's why they're here. Anybody who's watching the show right now, you're already questioning. So you're already starting to break your conditioning. So what's going to happen is it's happening more and more. You know this and I know this. 2010 hit, and it started to just go crazy. And then 2015 hit, and it was even more crazy. So 16 and 17 has been insane, because we know that we're moving into another era. So what will happen is there will be turmoil, like you said. Because there's always the death throes of the old and the new. But what will happen is there's going to be a seminal point that's going to reach. And what that means is, when it's a seminal point, that means that enough of us are going to be awake, and enough of us are going to be conscious of what's happening, that those people who are behind us and not ready will be outnumbered by the people, so overwhelmed by the people who are ready to move forward and ascend, that they will be brought along, and their minds will spontaneously change, because we know that the mob rules. If you have a group of people and everybody starts thinking a certain way in that group, whether it's right or wrong, people will act upon that, because it's the Doppler effect, and everybody will do that. So what's going to happen is, right now we're below that seminal point, but we're getting there, and we're building steam. And once we hit that point of no return, even those people that are trying to hide this from us won't be able to anymore, because they will not have the power to do so.
Yeah.
Period. Right now, they're realizing that they're losing that power, because for the first time in history, there are more of us awake than there ever has been on this planet at this particular time. Whether or not, like you said, Neil, that aliens are making that happen, if they are, it's because these other guys that have been in charge of this planet for the last 70 at least, and maybe 150 or more years, have been keeping us from being where we should already be.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so
myself don't think that there's going to be any mayhem like this. I think people of the world are awake enough to understand that that we're not alone here in the cosmos, and if there is an extraterrestrial disclosure, I think people will be very open to it and accepting to it, like kind of like the beginning of the first Independence Day when the ET showed up. Everybody was happy. You know, they were going on tops of building, inviting them down. You know, they wanted to party with them. You know, I think it would be that type of an atmosphere than the gloom, you know, mayhem and you know, and we're only thinking like that because of our conditioning, which we've heard over the course of like the last several years, a decade or so, that hey, if ET comes, this is what's going to happen. So that thought is so ingrained in our mind that that we think that's what's going to happen. But the dangerous thing with that is that our mind is very powerful. If we're thinking that this is what's going to happen, and these are the thoughts that we're projecting out into the universe, then it will manifest itself. You know, if you have
if they have that
thinking the same thing.
If they have that secret agenda to do this false flag mock alien invasion, they want us thinking that, and that's where I'm trying to explain to people to not think that. Because I agree with you. I think that even if aliens do show up, and say that it does by happenstance, aliens show up, and guys like me are saying that might be a false flag. What if they're not, and they really are? Because like Omar said, if you're going to travel however distance they travel, because they're not from Mars or the moon, and they're going to travel hundreds of millions of light years to get here, you don't do that just to pick a fight.
That's right. Look at these bipedal species. Let's go down there and kick their ass with our lasers.
Let's go down and stomp on that ant farm, right?
Exactly. I don't think so.
Drop a rock on them.
They're ascended way higher. They don't need nothing from us aside from peace and cooperation.
Right, exactly.
Maybe they can teach us that.
So I think, guys, this is a perfect segue into bringing on our next guest, who is Miriam Delicado, and she is an experiencer contactee, has written a couple of books on her experiences and goes around and talks about it. And she does, the last event we did with her was called The Spiritual History of Extraterrestrial. So since we're on that topic right now, we're going to bring her in and have her discuss her perspective. And if you guys are cool with it, I want you guys to stay around, stick on standby, jump in whenever you feel comfortable. And if not, I'll bring you back on in a few, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I'm going to bring Miriam on now.
Hello there, Neil. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hey.
Hey.
Welcome, how are you?
I'm great. This was a very impromptu jumping on and talking about disclosure, but I'm actually really happy that things worked out that I could come on for a few minutes and talk about this, because I was just listening to the other gentleman speak, and I think that I really agree with a lot of the things that they're saying about how this particular moment in time for this disclosure and what's actually taken place is really historical. And not a lot of people are aware of it. I've contacted a few people in different countries, for example, and they have no idea that this is going on here. I've talked to people in the community in the last week, and they have no idea. And I even have a friend who is very, very, very very up to date normally on these types of
Miriam,
I think that is the most important point to actually look at when we're talking about this with the disclosure. You just froze, so I don't know if you are still hearing me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, you're still hearing me? Okay. I myself have been called many things: a contactee, an abductee, an experiencer. There's a lot of different names that I've sort of come under because of the experiences that I've had. But what I've learned from all of this is that you know, I have had a lot of experience that other people just simply have not. And they're having to look at extraterrestrials, UFOs, time travel, energy sources, spirituality from the perspective of a student who is learning as they go along, who is opening the book. You know, it's like opening a book and turning the pages, and everyone's learning something every day at this point, and we're all being completely opened up as a result of what it is that we're learning. But from my perspective, you know, I've had face-to-face physical contact with these beings. I was downloaded with tremendous amounts of information and knowledge. And I want to be really clear about this, that I came forward to the public in 2007. That was the year, November of 2007 was when I finally came forward to the public about my experiences in 1988. And even before that, when I would talk to people within this community, they were very limited, I think, extremely limited. Back in 2005, for example, when I went to the UFO Congress conference, I found a lot of the information that was coming forward to be very limited in its ability. This is important for what's happening right now. In their ability back then to be able to look from the entire circumference of what this phenomenon is. And my complaint about the UFO disclosure movement is that many people get set in one view, one assessment, one concept, and they can't get themselves out of that. The reality is that extraterrestrial contact, as I've stated so many times before, touches on every level of our existence as human beings walking on the earth. Now, if you ask me, I don't need anyone, including Tom DeLonge, the government, a representative, I don't need anyone to tell me what this experience is. I can certainly use guidance along the way to better understand it, to be able to express it more clearly, for example, but I don't need someone confirming to me that extraterrestrials are actually real. So coming from that point where there's no question, there's no doubt, there's not even an inkling of that, even for people who say that they believe, even for people who say, yes, I believe it, until you have that actual one-to-one, full-on physical contact, you cannot ever truly and completely understand or conceptualize what this is, period. All these people who have had even sightings from a distance, it is not the same thing. So to me, when we talk about disclosure, I'm always coming from disclosure being these being from my point of view, which is they're real, there's no question. Are we going to have disclosure, meaning is this going to be public knowledge, everyday knowledge, and what is the result of that and why? And how I look at that, how I look at disclosure, is through my own eyes and my own struggle and journey of being able to accept and move forward with this incredible information that they share with us. Now, with the recent level of disclosure, because it was certainly a level of disclosure, Tom DeLonge came forward, and he's had, I don't know a lot about Tom, you know, I don't know a lot about anyone in the community, to be honest, because I do my own thing, and I pay attention, I listen, I have a lot of respect for a lot of people in the community, but I don't delve deeply into any one person's work, let's say. But what I do know about Tom DeLonge is that he has been very vocal about putting together his organization and coming forward to the public, and he finally did that. And once it came out, there was a little bit of a letdown because we thought that maybe there was going to be some kind of quote-unquote disclosure that was going along with this. And in essence, there was, and there is, because disclosure doesn't mean some person or some group or some individual standing up and saying, extraterrestrials are here, this is what they are. Disclosure is a process. And that is what I think that needs to become understood, is that disclosure is a process. And as Tom came forward, he brought with him some really high level scientists and ex-military and ex-government people. Now, not one of them said the word UFO. Not one of them said extraterrestrial. Not one of them said disclosure. But look what happened.
Right.
Now, something interesting as a mirror to that, people said, why now did the government release, and I'm going to ask you to chime in here in a moment, Neil, to explain to the listeners and viewers in more detail, because I know that you'll be able to do it better than me. I believe it was the Pentagon released the video into mainstream media saying this is a UFO. Correct? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And so this guy shows up, and all of a sudden, ba-boom, he's an instant, the man, the voice, the disclosure guy.
Yeah.
Like, who is this?
Yeah. You talk about Luis, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. He's just the front man, and he was the person that was working on the 5th floor of the Pentagon, identifying unidentified aerial threats for the Department of Defense. And all of a sudden, just like within 2 months, he becomes the key whistleblower out of every ufologist that's ever existed, because of CNN and the mainstream news.
So he goes on to CNN and the mainstream news, and then all of a sudden, within, quote, the online and alternative truther movement, UFO, ET, everywhere, in every direction, all of a sudden this guy becomes the topic. Now, why? What is it that happened? I'm going to tell you what I see. All of a sudden, I start hearing behind the scenes, and in certain, people being a little more vocal, they're saying, "Oh, well, geez, now we have people arguing about who's going to be the top dog in UFO disclosure," and that really is what I see in this. Because Tom DeLonge came forward with what it is that he's doing. If he continues, and if they didn't do that over here with this Pentagon guy, then Tom DeLonge and his group could become the voice of the people, the voice of reason, the voice of explaining what it is that's happening. Stephen Greer has to come up in this conversation, because Stephen Greer has been vying for that position his whole career. He wants that. He demands that. He says that.
Yeah.
He's the guy. I disagree with all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I completely, adamantly, fully, and completely disagree with all of them. And I'll tell you why. Because the guy from the Pentagon has no idea what's happening spiritually. Because the people over here with Tom DeLonge, they're not going to talk about spirituality, and worse than that, they're going to market it. Now, let's take a look at Stephen, who, Stephen Greer has done a lot of really great things, but I don't agree with everything that he's said either, as I'm sure, everyone has differences, but I do respect his work. And with Stephen Greer, for example, again, he says that there is no such thing as any bad extraterrestrials. So none of these conversations that you can have with any one of these is truthful, completely truthful and accurate. Not true. It's not that they're not truthful. Let me rephrase that. It's not that it's not accurate, and it doesn't go in depth far enough in order for us to have a really powerful dialogue about what it is that's happening. We know, everyone watching this, listening, everyone that is a part of these communities, these different communities, that is seeking truth in life on any level spiritually. We're all being driven towards some form of knowledge about extraterrestrials. Even the Vatican has been doing it for years, trying to get people to still believe in God through the Catholic Church, for example, by saying that they accept extraterrestrials as God's creatures, as being another one of God's creatures. So the fact is that extraterrestrial everything, the extraterrestrial spiritual understanding about the cyclical, I can't remember which one of you it was, you were saying something about this and I thought, wow, this is fantastic, because you were talking about the cycles of the spiritual growth. Who was it that was talking about that?
I think that was me.
Yeah, can you reiterate that for me?
I forget the context of what I was saying, but basically I was saying that ultimately, when we have disclosure and true disclosure, it goes deeper than we know. And one of the components is the cycles of time and the galactic consciousness, and how we're going through the secular nature. And and many different civilizations have existed before us that were way more advanced than us, that have been at these times of enlightenment. So I think that's what I was referring to when I said that. But all of that is part of what will eventually be disclosed, that once we know one thing, it leads to the other thing. And when we really know the whole entire picture of our history of this planet, how long we've been around, and our ancestors right here, that's when I feel a lot of minds are going to blow.
One of the more interesting aspects of disclosure, from my perspective and what it is that I've experienced, is that extraterrestrials have been here since the beginning of time, of the planet Earth. And during that evolution of the human spiritual being that we have become, each one of us being a spiritual being, we've had the indigenous cultures around the world. And these indigenous cultures all over the planet know about these extraterrestrials. So I always like to bring people back when we start talking about disclosure, and we're talking about things like the government or technologies, or that kind of information. I like to bring it back down and say, hold on, people, who actually has the knowledge here? Who is it that we should listen to? Are we really going to listen to the people that popped up in the last 10 years and all of a sudden woke up one day and said, wow, I'm really interested in this subject, I want to do something? Or are we going to listen to the ancient cultures that have actually have that knowledge for thousands and thousands and thousands of years?
Yeah.
So in my opinion, the only way that we will ever have full disclosure, the only way that we will ever find the truth, is through this. This is disclosure. I'm going to tell you what disclosure is. Disclosure is when the indigenous people of the planet, the true caretakers of this earth, and the true knowledge keepers of the spiritual understanding, of the connection to the earth, of who we are, where we've come from, where we are going, what we are, how we exist, and what those true technologies are, for what energy is all about, only then will we have disclosure for our planet. That is disclosure. No one else coming forward is ever going to be able to give us something that is relevant for all of us, that every person in the Truther movement is exceptionally interested in, which is, what is the true history of the earth? What are all of these ancient sites all over the world? How do they fit into our current world? Where did they come from? Who built them? How did they come into being? You know who has that information?
The indigenous people.
Right. So where is disclosure? Where can we accept disclosure to come from? Can we accept it from Tom DeLonge, the government, Stephen Greer, from myself? No. It has to come from the indigenous people. So that is my hoorah for today.
Right. And it's interesting because the truth is hidden in plain sight. It's not like we have to dig too deeply when it comes to the indigenous communities. Just simply like looking at the scriptures, or even going to Egypt and knowing that we cannot carry this weight rock from this place to this place in such a short period of time, and this was definitely used with something even better than a diamond. Like all of that information out there, could lead us to the next question, where we can truly discover, our ancient past and our connection to extraterrestrials.
Yes, so I believe, and I agree with you 100%, because it is, I remember, and forgive me here for a moment to kind of reflect back in my own life of my own journey, but darn, it's been frustrating. It's been frustrating. Back in 2007, 2005, 2003, going back, people would say to me, "Oh my gosh, what did these beings tell you that's so valuable?" Well, they didn't care to hear, because they thought that they would be physically, it was like I was going to be able to physically hand them something that was going to be so valuable. But what is the value in this extraterrestrial disclosure? It is about the beings coming at different times and going through cycles of activation for human beings to assist in the enlightenment process, and talking about how they travel, whether they're on light ships. Yes, they do come on light ships. Are they coming in Merkabas? Yes, they're coming in Merkabas. Are they coming in dreams, in the astral and everything? This subject is the most complex subject that there could possibly be. And I'm hopeful that in my next book, I start to, which I'm going to be starting any day now, that I'm going to start to try to give my perception of what this actually is about, because I believe that people have awakened enough now to understand who they are. Because even on my website back in 2007, I think the website came out. 2005, I was still writing the book. 2007, I had the website, and I wrote at the top, "Remember who you are." And I remember even then people looking at that saying, "What does that mean? What does that mean?" And now it's the catchphrase, "Remember who you are." I'm like, oh, great. It's only taken how many? It's taken 10 years. So I'm asking people when they follow my work, when they're listening to what I have to say, to really listen to what is being shared, in understanding that I'm not going to be all technical and give you statistics and all of these other things. But something you said, Neil, which is so powerful. I want to tell you a story about the Hopi in all of this, which is really, really interesting. I've spent enough time down there, and I've been around, blessed, and honored enough to just be hanging out with Hopis, some of the Hopi people, and someone from out of town comes and visits them, and they'll sit down with some Hopi people and they'll start having a conversation, and I'll just listen and observe, and really, truly listen and observe. And then when they get up, the person from out of town says, "Wow, that was really powerful." And I'll look at them and say, "Do you understand what they just said to you?" And they'll say, "Yes." And I'll say, "Well, what do you think they just said to you?" And they'll kind of repeat back what they thought that they heard. But in reality, the Hopi just gave them a piece of very sacred knowledge that has been coveted as being something that they don't just throw into the air for no reason whatsoever, something that's sacred. And where I'm going with this is to say that the truth really is in front of us, and we're not paying attention. And this is the truth of this is the truth and the reality of disclosure. It's been almost 30 years, 29 and a half years, almost 29, well, going on my 30th year. October of 2018 will be my 30th year since my main contact. And through that, I look back, and 30 years ago, no one talked about this. Period. No one. So we are if disclosure is not a moment, disclosure is a process. Now, when are they going to come and start walking amongst us? I think that maybe, listen, some of them already do walk amongst us, but they are hidden, and I already know that. But when will they be able to walk amongst us? I don't know that that's necessarily anytime soon, because for one primary reason, because the energy that they carry has such a strong effect on the human body that it actually changes, not only it changes the cellular level, but it changes the microcellular level. And that is something that I don't know that anyone on the planet has the ability to work with that kind of energy. It's taken me 30 years to become comfortable with that energy. So imagine that they came down today and just started to, hang out. I don't see that happening. So, and thank you, Neil.
Let me ask you this then. Do you feel that it will happen within maybe the next 100 years? And do you feel that we would have an extended lifetime, maybe in this lifetime, where we would still be around for it?
I truly believe that we will absolutely, within the next 100 years, have physical contact, and they'll be walking amongst us.
Me too.
But if that were to happen right now, if all of a sudden they were to be there walking amongst us right now, would be in a dire situation. So I don't want that personally.
Yeah.
But I do see that within another 100 years to 150 years, we will be cohabitating.
All right. So I guess I got to drink a lot of juice so I can stick around.
But again, on that note, I think that in the next 50 years, and I might be a little bit too old for this, but the next generation maybe, life does have the potential of being extended. But that ties into, I don't know if it was Omar or Leonard that was talking about this, where they were saying that how the monetary is connected to this as well, and that we don't quite understand how all of that works. If we can get our monetary systems to be more in balance with the spiritual ways in which human beings are intended to live, and then by doing so, cleaning up our planet and living in deeper harmony, then I could see that within another 50 to 75 years that life could be, doubled and extended at that point.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's exciting.
It is.
Yeah, that's totally happening even right now with the stem cell research. So nowadays we can grow, new lungs, new skin, new heart, new kidneys, liver, kind of what have you. So I would imagine that in the next 20 to 25 years, we'll all have access to that type of medical technology to where our lives can be extended indefinitely, probably not, but by a few decades, maybe.
Yep.
Well, if we eat the right, the right nuts and berries, there's a couple of guys over in China that lived to be 150 years old. They did that 100 years ago just by eating the right nuts and berries and roots and staying healthy. So we know that just the right foods makes your body balance better. And if you're in complete harmony with your body, your mind, your soul, the food intake that you have, that's not this American crap food that most of us end up with here in America. Growing your own food or getting organic stuff is far healthier for our bodies. That's going to extend our life just purely by doing that on its own.
If we were to right now, everybody decide to eat really well, and we stop the chemtrails, stop the fluoride in the water, made sure we have alkaline water when we're not eating food, regular water when we're eating food, if we just use the exact template of what we know creates perfect health, we'd all be living like a long, long time. Plus, Russian scientists came out 10 years ago saying there is no code in the human genome for death. There is no DNA code. So they didn't know why we were dying. And then they realized it was a decay of the telomeres. However, there's a way to reverse that. So yeah, we're getting to that point right now. And it all ties into this disclosure because a lot of these technologies, these extraterrestrial beings probably already have. And when we implement this on a mass level, we can really create peace on earth, heaven on earth, I feel.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Neil, I would like, if possible, just to wrap things up with
Yeah,
myself. I
please
have
do.
an appointment coming up, and I just want to say thanks for inviting me at the last minute here to come on with you. It's been great. Um, and just to say that as far as disclosure is concerned, no one person should be the voice of disclosure. Until we see a unified group that is in agreement, we should be cautious of all information that comes forward. We should question all. We should question all viewpoints until they are proven. And what we need to do is just be careful not to follow blindly just because someone's presenting something in a specific way in respect to disclosure. And to remember that the whole topic of UFOs being technology, but when I talk about technology, I'm not just talking about a UFO. I'm talking about the technology of what you're saying, which is the actual energy of the universe. Now, if you want to talk technology, we are, as human beings, the most powerful beings, the most powerful technology available. And what we're doing is learning how to access it and use it again, okay, because we had that in the past. So the technology is really us. And so I hope that people start to really take that in, that technology is about accessing DNA, accessing our cells, accessing universal force, all sorts of things. And so that is really important part of the conversation when we talk about, quote, extraterrestrials. So is Tom DeLonge going that route? I don't see that, okay? So again, not saying anything against Tom. What I'm saying is it's a piece of this beautiful mosaic that we have in front of us. And each one of us holds a piece of that. And until those pieces come together, and until the indigenous come together and make those statements to the world and bring about a greater understanding, we need to definitely, pay attention to what we're seeing. And here's something else, to what we're not seeing. What is not being said is just as important as what is, and that's what gives us the questions to lead us on the path. So again, thank you for everyone that listened and will listen later. Thanks. It's been a pleasure, Omar and Leonard. It was really nice listening to the two of you. Good program again. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you.
Love you.
Okay, take care. And
Okay,
I don't even know how to get out of.
you can just close the window of the X.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Take care, everyone.
Talk later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Miriam.
Okay, awesome. So, a couple of things that Miriam said that I kind of want to wrap up and talk about before we bring on somebody in the audience who actually wants to come on and give his perspective. Is she said that it's about what's not being said, right? Like the one thing that I tripped out on when I heard To the Stars Academy broadcast was the fact that they did not mention extraterrestrials.
Right.
But it was entirely about extraterrestrials, and they're like, oh, we're talking, let's skip over this part right here and let's go to the technology and talk about how I can change your life for the better. Now invest, right? So it's very interesting that's the case. And then she also said that, there's this kind of war in the ufology movement, almost like of who was going to be the front man for ufology. And I wanted to add to that. And the whole reason why like people like Stephen Greer or Steve Bassett haven't been taken into the government and made the front man like Tom DeLonge is because they were not going in alignment with the agenda of the government.
Right.
Tom DeLonge 100% was like, oh, yes, sir, please, sir, tell me how high to jump, right? And he's just been following and like, he's like, oh, like quotes from him are like, oh, do you know the kind of entourage I'm walking around with? Like, that's what he said on Joe Rogan, right? Like, he's really proud of the fact that these high-level government officials hold him in high regard enough to have him be the front man. So, and he never fought any of this stuff. Like, when he was had a first interaction with them in the room or whatever, he said in DC, And then they started saying to him, hey, what's your intention, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, I'm on your side. I want to help you out. Like, so they took that in. So the reason why these other people in the movement that we actually broadcast on these networks aren't coming forward is because they're not saying that, hey, the military-industrial complex is working for you. But Tom DeLonge is.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Yeah, it's about the dollar. At the end of the day, it's about the dollar. And personally, I don't think there should be any person or organization that's the front of this UFO movement.
Mm-hmm.
I think it should be everyone that's engaged and unify and come together and work together instead of working against one another and thinking about the mighty dollar on how they're going to profit off of this, and really that's going to be the downfall of all this. Is as soon as you add monetary value to anything, then of course things are going to get messed up. And it's like Miriam was saying, we need to live in harmony with the planet, like the Aboriginals do. We can see the Aboriginals in antiquity, or even a couple hundred years ago, they had teepees. They were they were essentially camping, and they were living off the ground and off the land, and they were in harmony with it. And that's something that we have lost as a society, and it's all because of the dollar and who has the most.
Right. And I'm glad you reiterated that, Omar, because I wanted to make sure to reiterate what she had said and what we had touched on. She touched on that, and you touched on it earlier, and then again just now, and that and I know because we've been working with these people, the key to our civilization and the understanding of who we are is not going forward with this technology. Like she said, we are the technology. The key to our understanding is the past. What we need to listen to these elders, these Aboriginal people, because they've been telling us the stories the entire time. Yes. They've been telling us definitively here in North America and over in Australia and in Africa and in Europe, these elders have been telling us the stories that aliens came here, that we are aliens, that they have been here all the time, and all this is happening. We need to now look back. Look what the guys like Stephen and Evan Strong are doing in Australia. We need to look back at our history. Look what the guys like Bruce Cunningham and the group that he's with, Klaus Donna and those guys that are working on the past, digging it up, because to find the civilizations and to understand our ancient civilizations that weren't in fact bulldozed over by a conquering power and built and burnt down by a conquering power, that's still there for us to discover, is going to show us that we knew these people, and in fact may be descendants from these people. And that we are older than 10,000 years, or where they're saying they're only trying to give us 7,000 or 8,000 years. And 20 years ago, they wouldn't go past 3,000 or 4,000 years, that we have never been around since then. Now we know we go back farther. So because we're looking into the past, that's the key to finding out who we are now to move forward in the future, is to look into the past. It's not to look at the technology, or to look at, like she said, not to look at our government for any kind of disclosure, because they're, like Omar said, they're about the dollar. They're not going to give us any real information. They're not our teachers. We're remembering who we were. They're not our teachers. They don't own it. We do.
And they've helped us out. This disclosure is just going to help us out, so that we can do this more. And we're the ones in the field talking to people, having these conversations and saying this is real and here's the evidence of it, and then talking to them about how it connects to spirituality and consciousness, and like I gotta be honest here. I have been trolling Tom DeLonge's Twitter feed, and I've been trolling their To the Stars Academy, and I've been looking at all the comments, man, and like 90% of them are people like, "Hey, you guys are false flag," like blah blah blah. Like it seems like the majority of the people that are even commenting on any of their videos, because I look at it extensively, and most of them like are really saying that you guys are not doing something like that is for the benefit of humanity, even though the disclosure is going to help us out, but it's just that they have an alternate agenda, whether it's a false flag or
information is just going to help us, but what they're doing it for, like you said, they skipped around the elephant in the room and kept talking about the elephant in the room and trying to describe the elephant in the room without saying the elephant that's in the room.
Yes.
Hey, look at that elephant.
I love that. That's it, man. That's exactly what it is.
I think long snout, big ears. Look what's over here, a peanut.
We need to pay more attention to the oral history that's come down from our ancestors, and like JD would say, our grandcestors, and stop dismissing it as mythology and just simple storytelling around the fire. Because these stories that are coming down, they're very, very, very real. These are facts. from father to son, from mother to daughter. They're passing down these stories. A mother and a father are not going to lie to their children. They're going to tell them exactly how it went down. That would be like us lying to our children. We're not going to. We're going to tell them the accurate information as we understand it. And then they'll go and tell their kids and their kids and their kids. And of course, through time, the story's going to be lost a little bit or changed up a little bit. But the fact is that the root principle of that story is still going to remain. Right? Yeah. It's like you were saying earlier, about the rockets in antiquity. Myself, I believe that, and Neil touched on this a couple of weeks ago, telling us that we're looking at Mars from a red spectrum, and it's actually a living planet. And what I've proposed in the past is that those rockets that we were seeing that were coming here from Earth are the ones that are coming from Mars, and those were us that were coming from Mars to Earth because of the technology difference between the rocket thrusters and anti-gravity, and even biological vessels that these guys use are, totally 100% different to rocket fuel in the past. So when our ancestors are telling these stories, these are actual facts. If they tell us that we're coming from Mars, they're not bullshitting. They're telling us that we're coming from Mars. This is what they saw. This is what they got. And this was
They didn't have the Sci-Fi Channel back then to make up stories. They told you what they saw. It was important. Yeah.
What I've realized through my research is that many, if not all, mythology is actually based on fact. Even when it comes to Zeus and the Indian gods and Krishna and Vishnu,
it's all based in some story that someone was told as truth.
Yeah. So back then, when there was in Greece, when they were talking about Zeus, they weren't like, oh, some mythological god and these stories. There was a reality to them. But Plato was talking about Atlantis. He knew that Atlantis existed, and he was talking about it. But it's so many hundreds and thousands of years have passed that we've completely been disconnected from the fact that that was complete truth, and now it's become fabricated even more, become more of mythology. So which leads me to the realization that when people start realizing the truth, me knowing the truth and thinking about what the truth really is blows my own mind. Right.
Well, you don't have to understand. This is the most important thing for people to understand. People in history didn't write things like we do. They didn't have entertainment. They didn't waste their time writing entertainment. Writing to them was something that was brand new and sacred. So when they wrote something down, it was a story about something that really happened.
That's right.
They didn't go around and make up stories like we do now for entertainment purposes and retell the same story 25 different ways. They wrote it down because it was important, and they wanted history. They wanted the world to remember it. So when they told the story of Troy, we said, oh, maybe it was just something they made up, right? Well, they didn't. We now know that. We found the city.
That's right. Turned out to be real.
So it was real. So if they talk about Zeus in some form had to have been, in their minds, a god. It wasn't a fictitious character. Zeus was someone that someone saw. And that's why they wrote down Zeus came out of the sky and was here. They didn't make that up. It wasn't Children Afraid of the Dark. They wrote down what they saw happening and the way they saw it in the best way they could describe it.
Well, if we go to India and we talk, to any person in India and ask them about Krishna, they're going to tell you that he's very much real. He came, he visited, he stayed with us, and then he left. Vishnu, same thing. He came, he stayed, mingled with us, and then he left. To those guys, this is not mythology. These are actual facts, real history of what went down. And like you were saying, writing is a new invention for our ancestors, according to as we understand, because we know that there was literature far earlier than that, but the writing system that we have now was a brand new technology. So they're just not going to take just anything and write it down. It had to have been something extremely important to the society, to the scholars, to the kings, for them to leave this record behind for us.
Right, and the archaeological evidence is now proving exactly what you're saying. Graham Hancock is on the forefront of a lot of this, and he's going to be at our conference in Irvine, California in October. Cool. And he's going to be basically showcasing the fact that a lot of this mythology is actually based on reality. And when you talk about India, Omar, one of the stories that actually comes to my mind, and I'm going to leave with this story and then we'll bring in our next guest, and was the Ramayana. You guys are familiar with the Ramayana?
Yeah.
Ram and Sita?
Yeah.
So in Ramayana, there's another humanoid being that exists on the planet that's an ape-like being, and that's Hanuman's people. Hanuman's people are ape-like beings. So what it's saying right there is there were at least two different types of humanoid beings living on the planet, and they were working together. And then when Rama had to go to Sri Lanka in order to save Sita, Hanuman created a bridge with his army of half monkey people from the tip of India to Sri Lanka. And it was a stone bridge, and it was for like thousands of years it's been in our scriptures, right? And when I was a kid, I was taught it in Indian, like Hindu school, and like they were just, it was all over the place. Watch movies on it. And then just recently, through flying overhead over India and Sri Lanka, they have found a huge land masses of huge stone tablets that are placed by where they put there naturally, that are underneath the ocean by 300 feet, right? So now that takes us back to the last ice age when Noah's flood happened and the fall of Atlantis and all that. So after the fall of Atlantis and the water levels rose, the number of feet that the water rose was 300 feet. So it's like they found this bridge that's connecting India to Sri Lanka, and it's 300 feet underwater, you know, and that just like validates something. And Indian scripture is probably one of the biggest mythology in the world because it's the only mainstream religion that's based on mythology and, you know, multiple gods and stuff that still is kind of in existence. So this goes back really, really far, and it kind of proves to me, you know, these ancient mythological stories.
It can't be a coincidence when we have Rama's Bridge. That's the one that you're talking about. Rama's Bridge being 300 feet below water, and then we go over to Yanaguni. That's 300 feet below the water, and then we go to Dwarka, which is again 300 feet below water. And you know, it just goes on and on and on. It's there's no coincidence. And you know, this you know, I had the privilege of talking with Philip Lindsay about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and we dug into the timeline of a human history, and he's talking about root races and sub-root races and such, and the Atlanteans, they were the fourth root race, and then from them, you know, came the Aryan root race, and then from there, you know, from the Aryan root races where the Hindu and Persian sub-races came in, and then from that time on, and here we are today. So, you know, when Neil was saying that there's, you know, multiple different societies that and civilizations that have lived on this planet, this goes back like almost 150 million years when humans were actually giants on this planet, and then along the way, just like reptilians, it became smaller and smaller and smaller. We've become smaller in stature as well. Right, so you know, there's a lot of history that's been lost to us, and you know, I wouldn't even say history; it's our consciousnness has been distorted, so that and so what we see isn't actually what we're seeing. You know, it's that you know, I'm not sure if I'm even making sense with this. You know,
no, you are.
We're seeing something which is, you know, it's not true. You know, our and what's true is what we are seeing, but our consciousness is so distorted that we just can't make sense of what we're seeing because of the vastness and our censorship that's involved here.
I was going to say that's why, Omar, exactly. You hit right on the head right there at the last point. The reason that we're seeing what we're seeing as far as history is being told is because we're being told by the conquerors what history is, and they're not telling the real truth.
That's the biggest component of what we do too, is like unwriting the writing of history and then rewriting it, you know. All right, so guys, if you want to stick around again and then just sit back, and feel free to jump on. I'm going to bring on our first audience member that's going to talk, and his name is Dr. J. Paul de Vierville. Hopefully I said your last name right. So we're going to bring you on, and we've actually never done this before. We've never done a webinar where we brought on somebody from the audience to talk. So this is kind of cool, and I'm hoping that this can be the beginning of, you know, discussions, because it's not about talking heads telling us what they feel. You know, it's about all of us coming together.
Well, I'm honored to be first participant guest here. I've been following since the beginning, and you've really been all over the place, which is quite good. Some of you I didn't know existed. But one thing I would say to start off with here, and I'll be short and make just a few points, but the deeper the memory, the further the vision. I like where you have and where you were right now in terms of going way back into ancient history. And I think, you know, keep your eyes on the pyramids. You're going to be seeing some revelations coming out of that. But I do think it's important that I agree with most everything that was said, especially what Miriam was saying. I did not know that she existed, but what she was saying and how she was saying it in terms of her own inner authority. I think that's really one of the things that is coming out of this, is that each of us as an individual. One of my teachers was Joseph Campbell when I was at the Jung Institute in Switzerland. He was teaching there. So this whole realm of mythology, I mean, it's a grand landscape to follow, to go back into that. But I do think we need to start to put a closure to disclosure. This is much more than disclosure. I think there's a whole thing. It's not so much ET or technology and disclosure. It's more an issue of advanced beings and revelation. I think there's a sense of revelation. I don't know if any of you know the work of Paul von Ward. He has it has to do with genes, God, genes, and consciousness. Paul von Ward. He's been around, but I think again we're seeing this, in terms of our own perspectives. I was 1 year old when Roswell happened. I had no idea about that, but I visited. But seeing this in the context of the 70 years, I think is really, really important. But again, that's the 70 years of the United States of America. This is, as your panelists have mentioned, this goes much, much deeper. This goes way back. So again, the ancients, I've been looking at the crop circle phenomena. All of them are happening in ancient landscapes. So there's something about the ancients, the indigenous, that's going back there. So I think, how we remember who we are in terms of a human species is important. But I agree with what everyone has been saying here. And I think you're right on in terms of the money, the industry, the science, the technology, but that is our current mythology in terms of the way that we look at things purely economic, from this capitalist model. But there's a deeper thing in terms of nature, and we must remember that Mother Nature always bats last. So, and I totally agree, there is going to be no spokesperson for this. There's no pope of disclosure, so to speak. God bless the Catholic. I mean, they're making great strides. Danny Sheehan, what he is doing in terms of how to explain this in terms of some, the religious institutions of the West. But I think there's also this whole sense of angelic revelation or advanced beings of conscious intelligence. They're coming here, you are, Neil, a light worker. I mean, if they're coming here from elsewhere within the cosmos, within our own Milky Way, within the galaxies, they're coming in on light through the sun, or however, in a very, very different physical realm than, this is even beyond, this is way beyond technology in that sense. So I really compliment you on how you pulled this together. I mean, we're blessed with the internet, with Wi-Fi, with Zoom. I mean, Zoom is fantastic. But it only takes a few, though. And I think one thing I would say, what I noticed, I got myself, 4 or 5 pages of notes here. Slow down. There's no rush to disclosure. I think, yes, this was a historical moment. Linda Moulton Howe, Graham Cameron, they're all, Stephen Bassett. I mean, and again, I think we need to be thinking, what's after the rock concert? Tom DeLonge was, he's a rock star, and he played, he's lead guitar. Okay, but we need to see the rock concert is over in that sense. And yeah, there'll be more video and it'll be a little refined. But again, that's just going to be more evidence, as Miriam says, that she doesn't need anybody to tell her. And I think, in terms of my own personal experience, that's a whole other thing. We won't go there. But in terms of the revelation, I don't need the government telling me that, ET is, and it's not ET, it's advanced beings. It's advanced beings of consciousness. It's simple. It's A, B, C. And so, but again, I compliment your Leonard and Omar. I think, we've really circumambulated the globe here, the planet. I think, it's the context of the planet. And then again, the question would be, how are we going to start being to communicate with this intelligence, first of all, among ourselves and peacefully? I mean, I totally agree. I mean, they're not going to come all the way across the galaxy and pick a fight. I mean, they don't, what do we have that that they need. There isn't that out there. But again, I would simply, in a sense, get back to deep memory. I think we need, and I'll close with this, what I think, we have all we've grown up in the outer space age. My cousin was Neil Armstrong, so that's a whole other story. When he was landing on the moon, I was doing sweat lodges with Winnebago Indians up in Black River Falls. Watching that, it was a very different time back in 1969. We're coming up to only 50 years of that. But I think we're at a place now, we don't need to go to outer space. I think we need to go back into deep inner time and see this in the much larger, and there's a whole field, and I teach it, it's called Big History. And again, there's a lot more here to talk about, but I'll slow down and I'll sit and listen. And again, at a round table where everyone comes with their own sense of authority. And again, we appreciate what has gone on, but I think the rock concert is over. Now we need to go out and as Jobs would say, and one more thing. I would really like, Neil, if you would ask Robert Bigelow if he would open up his warehouse, his archives, and maybe set up a museum in Las Vegas so we could see some of this stuff. There's apparently he has the materials, but I think that would be, why not? I mean, we as taxpayers have paid for this, although it's been outsourced to a private company. I think it would be interesting if they could create a museum in cooperation with the Roswell UFO Museum, which they have. Yeah. So anyways, thank you much. A happy new year. I mean, 2018 there will be a change. There is a transformation going on here. Yes.
I'd like to ask you, you touched on Joseph Campbell. Did you actually study under him? Did you?
Yeah. He was there. He lectured there in part of the seminars.
He was very intricate in my life's path and journey. I never met the man, but I always, someone says to me, if there's anyone in history that you could sit down with for an hour and have lunch and talk to, almost always I will say Joseph Campbell.
Yeah. Well, I the same. Mine was C.G. Young. I wanted to,
nice.
And then also
another good one.
Yeah. And Goethe. Well, there's a whole host, and again, those folks are still back there. You kind of ask, well, what would Joseph think about all of this?
Oh, and I wish if he were only if he were alive. What if?
Yeah.
We'd have him on. Could you imagine?
Of course, Jung wrote on UFOs, and there's a whole lot of stuff there too. But no, I just think we need to slow down and be sustainable. This is going to outlive our bodies, but again, there's also the realm of the soul and how that will transition from age to age. And there's a lot more, but
that's the one key factor here. We really didn't touch on that, but I usually do on my show, and I do that on, when I have groups that I'm talking to. Is that what we're in this for at this point is our souls?
Yeah. I know Linda Moulton Howe talks. She gets into a lot of that, but again, this is beyond alien disclosure. This is advanced being revelation in the realm of, I think, of angelics. And there's that angelic.
And that's remembering what we have forgotten.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a lot that we've forgotten, I'll end with this. Keep your eyes on the pyramids. I do know that there's going to be some major revelation. Graham, and who I know in England and studying the crops, there's some major things going to be coming out in the years in the future, near future.
Near future.
Very near future.
I think
like next year.
2018 is the year. I've been feeling that for a long time intuitively, and then now all this stuff is happening.
As well as stuff from the Aborigines in Australia. I talked to Stephen and Evan Strong. They were alluding to 2018 and a lot of things coming out of there as well. So stay tuned, because like you said, the pyramids, that's one of the reasons why I'm helping those guys with the tourism there, and so is Omar. Helping them with the tourism. Omar is actually putting together a whole package. He can tell you about that, where he's actually promoting that to keep people's attention on the pyramids, because like you said, what Hancock and these guys are working on over there, and the Strongs in Australia, what they're working on. You guys out there in the world, you need to really, you think that this stuff that came out with the federal government of the United States is nothing. And like Neil says, and this is like the professor said, that guy's a rock star and he's just playing the solo and getting your attention. The real juice is in the past, guys.
Yeah, I think Miriam, and I did not know that Miriam existed, 2 hours ago. And so I will contact her and make that. And again, it's the connections and the relationships that develop out of this. And that's how we get all this together, is all of us have to work as one big voice. Because like you said, not one individual person should be anywhere near a liaison. It needs to be all of us, the entire world as an academic group moving forward.
What I'm hoping will come out of this is that part of the mission statement for Portal to Ascension is cooperation instead of competition. There's been so much competition because everybody's got to make some money and survive. And even in the UFO circuit, because I've produced events with so many people, we all need to have that bottom line, right? But now, like with this happening, like people are being motivated on a different level where it's like, we got to put ourselves to the side. Check
collaboration, collegiality, cooperation. Yeah.
So this right here is the beginning of it.
What we need to do is stop big business from getting into this industry and taking control of it, because then it will just become another entertainment channel.
This is not entertainment.
I really liked what Doctor said earlier about the rock concert's over, and when Miriam was speaking earlier, I had that thought going through my head as to what's next. We made contact and we're in discussion with these advanced beings. How will that play out in our schools and our curriculums? Will we begin to teach our students this new revelations and these new information? So I really like that point that Doctor made there.
Every institution needs to be changed. If this comes out and the information, the facts come out, our history books need to be changed, our science books need to be changed, the concept of how the universe is, So it makes sense that, yes, what you said, Professor, is exactly what we need. We need to sustain ourselves and just be present with it and not have to try to jump ahead, because there really is a lot to unwind. And just because we've been open to it doesn't mean the rest of the planet.
That's find a rhythm with this. I'm going to have to go now. Thank you much, and y'all have a Happy New Year.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
Thank you. We'll be
Happy New Year, Doctor. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Bye now.
Yeah. So what he was saying about the journey, right? Yeah. And there's a line in the Rig Veda, which is the Hindu scriptures, that says it's the destination has already been chosen. It's the journey that counts.
That's right.
And the destination is the ascended world of heaven on earth, which we'll get to. But right now, enjoy the ride.
That's how you get there. Are you going to get there with positive energy, or are you going to get there with depleted negative energy? And that's really the course and the path that we're all are on.
Well, and Gandhi said it. There's no hurry. Do you remember Gandhi? He said that too. The professor said that, and Gandhi had said that when they were, because he walked everywhere, and sometimes they were all in a hurry and wanting to run. He said, "Slow down. We're going to get there." He said, if we all run, we'll run out of energy. So why don't we take our time and get there full of energy? And that was where the way he went. He walked all across India. He walked across half the world,
Yep.
But he got there. His journey was same. He knew where the end card was. We know what the end game is. We know what the destination is. It's just a matter of how we get there and how we do it. And, that's the old sayings, we're slow down and smell the roses, because like the doctor said, we're pretty sure it's not going to happen completely in our lifetime. It'd be nice, right? Because we'll still be around. But then again, like we talked about, Neil, where who knows, maybe you and I will still be doing this in 150 years, right? And we'll still be we'll have a little bit more gray, but we'll still be sitting here talking. Or maybe we won't have gray, because by then we would just take a complete DNA upgrade, right? And just
we'll have no hair at all. We never have to shave. Our beards would be the same length always.
The same length always, right? And then you do that same thing with your eyes, and you get to do whatever you want. I mean, because apparently, afterwards when you talk to some of these psychics, like when I talked to Heather, she says, or Heather Reese, she says that the spirit guys tell her, once we do graduate from this college that is Gaia, that is Earth, that once we go out there in the universe, we get to pick which which lifetime with the way we looked and what year we were. So if we want to be for all eternity, when I was Chinese in 25, because that was when I was my best looking, I think I can be Chinese. I can be the guy I was when I was Chinese at 25 years of age.
Yeah.
And I'll look like him for the rest of eternity. I mean, you know what I mean? So why wouldn't we be able to do the same thing with all the stem cell stuff pretty soon? You know, I'm going to say I'm tired of my hair being so, so curly back here in the back. I want straight hair. And then the people who have straight hair say, I want curly hair. And you get to change all that. Who knows? But the truth is we're going to live longer, and we should, as long as we eat better. You know, I talked to Bruce Cunningham about that, and he says the people that are over there in, say, the Philippines, they may be a poor people, but they eat healthier than people in America because they have to eat all organic.
That's right. That's right. This vessel that we all occupy is going to expire, regardless of how much technology, what we add to it. We can give ourselves new parts and extend or prolong the lifespan. But at the end of the day, this vessel will expire, and we will reincarnate and come back to this beautiful marble. Because we all belong to the same soul group. We belong to the human soul group. And this is like you were just saying, like Heather Reese, this is going through a school process to where we are learning everything. And as Miriam was saying earlier, this machine that we have, our human body, is something that we're beginning to learn. And this is something that we're mastering. So it's only through reincarnation again and again and again and again as a global civilization that will come to understand this vessel that we occupy.
Yeah. And I thoroughly believe that we are the blended DNA of many different species that make up what we have here on the planet. If you look at all of us on the planet, you look at our DNA, you know, like you and I've talked about before, where some people say, well, we're very pig-like, where they could have literally taken some of our DNA from a pig, but then we're also very mantis-like, right? So we know that there's mantis beings out there. And we also, we also know that there's snake-like beings out there, and we're very reptilian. So people say that we start with a reptilian brain and then we build on that. So I believe that we are at some level a piece of all these different races that are out there that have made this one race that, who was it that said that? Was that the doctor, or was that Miriam, where they said that we're I think it was her, that we're the technology, we're the perfect. Perfect. Yep. This is more perfect than we believe, and we have more power than we believe. Neil said that, and and then even if you look at the Talmuds, different prophets have said that. Jesus had said that if you had enough, faith, you could literally move mountains. This is it. But we don't know it because we've forgotten it.
Yeah,
technology. We've forgotten our own spirituality. We've forgotten that if we all think that Mount Everest is now in downtown LA, it would be.
That's right. We can move things with our mind, and that's been proven again and again and again and again. In fact, each and every single person has that ability and within themselves. Just a quick example is if you are wearing a necklace with a pendant hanging off of it, put your elbow on the table, bend your wrist so that you can't move it, and visualize the pendant moving back and forth, side to side, and within just a few minutes, even if you've never done it before, within a few minutes, that pendant will be moving, and you have the capacity and the power and within you to bring that thing to a complete stop.
Yeah.
Right? So, literally, I carry a pendulum in my pocket at all times, and you're absolutely right. You can literally, that thing will be moving, and you can literally think to yourself or say out loud, "Stop," and that thing will.
That's right. Yeah. You just have to visualize it. Our thoughts will manifest themselves because that power is within us. And as long as you believe that you can't do it, well, then you can't do it.
That's the intention.
That's right. Your thought process is...
You have to believe, I can do this.
That's right.
And you will.
That's right.
The technology, the tools, the resources to create paradise, peace, universal peace, oneness, connectiveness,
right in here.
already exist.
Yep.
It's here now. We just have to collectively all get on the same page. And it's a shame that a lot of us only listen to our preachers, teachers, and government officials, right? Like, because as soon as it's put in your book and you're indoctrinated with the right information, then you'll just know it, right? What if they taught you that you have the power, and there was a class in elementary school where you start cultivating your energy to be able to maneuver objects, and we started doing that for the next 50 years. Like,
wow, what a beautiful world that would be.
The government, the CIA is doing it. Dude, if anybody hasn't read the
Back in
CIA
World War
documents
II.
about the remote viewing, the Stargate program, and the remote viewing of Mars, and you want to see some weird, like some weird shit, seriously, who will read that? Because it's the
Yeah.
most weirdest thing ever. Like,
They're doing it. And they've been doing it for a long time.
right.
Russians were doing it, Germans were doing it, Americans were doing it, all during World War II.
Yep.
So it's
What makes you think
very
they stopped?
real. That's right. It's very
Right.
real.
Yeah.
You know, I was just going to mention our thoughts. There's ETs that are using organic vessels, and there's no windows in these spaceships. But if you think in your head that, hey, I want to look out the window, a portal will open where you can physically look out the window, right? So it's you know, our mind is a very, very, very powerful thing indeed. And this is one of the reasons why I believe they tell us that we can only use 10% of our brain, is because they know the power of the mind and they're afraid of that power. So if you know, introduce that thought to someone that, hey, you can only use 10% of your brain, that person's going to believe that they can only use 10% of their brain, and they will only use 10% of their brain, and they will never understand that there's the other 90% that's there that they have access to. Why they can't do that is because they've been told.
Yeah.
Right. The
Right,
weakness
and think about this.
weakness
That's
of our
perfect.
current human state
Oh,
is
that's perfect you brought that up.
we believe everything that people tell us. You know, all your DNA is junk. You come from a monkey. 10% of your brain. You know, that's all you use. So as long as we are being bombarded with that thought, then that's what we're going to believe. Like, look at our society. We think that we evolved from monkeys. Why do we think that? Because that's
we were told.
That's right. That's a conjecture that we've been told. And 10% of our brain, and then now this DNA thing, it's all garbage. It's bullshit. It's
and that people with green eyes aren't, the green's not real. It's impurities.
That's right.
There's no such thing. Really, how come I have green eyes? You know what? And you're absolutely right. Why would anyone create? So let's just say there was a God who created. Let's just throw this all the way back to a God created the human race. Why would that God create the human race, give us green eyes, some of us, that doesn't exist, give us a couple of organs that have no possible use for us on this planet, give us this brain that's this big, and then go, yeah, but you can only use 10% of it.
That's right.
And then why would that God give us all, and then give us this DNA that's this big and say that's all junk and no use to you whatsoever with this little teeny piece? Why would I invent anything and give it those little, give us all this stuff and go, you can't use any of that? Why would you even do that? You wouldn't, right?
That's right. That's like building a car and telling you that only the tires will work. Nothing else works.
You have 1,000 horsepower, but you can only drive in first gear.
That's right. That's right. Putting limits on it.
The studies are out there already.
Control.
You know? There's studies out there with sound frequency that actually activates the junk DNA strands of our DNA. So like it's not like it's junk and we can't prove that it's anything else. We're starting to prove now that junk DNA isn't junk and it's starting to be activated.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and see, the more we vibrate at a higher rate, and like Omar said, we've been told all this, and we haven't mentioned this yet on this talk, but that's what's keeping us vibrating at a lower rate. The longer we vibrate at that lower rate, the more we don't have the use of those things. The more we start vibrating at a higher rate, the only way we can do that is spiritually within. We have to find ourselves and focus on ourselves and understand and break the conditioning away from what they're telling us. And question everything. Question what I say. I say this on the show all the time. So does Omar. So does Neil. Don't believe anything I tell you. Question it all. Go out there and look for it yourself. Look it all up. Read. Learn how to read. Dr. Stephen Greer tells you that. Everybody tells you that. Learn how to read. Look it all up. Go back. Some of you people, we talked about Joseph Campbell on here. Some of you people out there in the audience have no idea who that man is. Go and find out, because that's a rabbit hole you can go down for a while. And that's going to boggle your mind, and you're going to come right back and go, wow, he was one of the greatest professors in American history because of what he talked about, what he understood about history and mythology. He may not be a prophet of God, but I'll tell you, he was a great, great, great professor, and maybe one of the greatest professors of mythology in the history of our planet. And most people don't know who he is. So that kind of stuff, read. The stuff of the past is there. Our ancestors are trying to tell us who we are and who we were. And the people that you're listening to now are not. They don't want any change. The church wants it exactly the way it is. The media wants it the way it is. The people who think they own this planet want it the way it is. The governments want it the way it is. They want us just like this.
Yeah. They want you to be dumb. And all this stuff really began when the Industrial Revolution began. And really from that point forward, they've been consistently trying to bring our vibration down to a lower point by telling us that, the clear example is that in our diets, they tell us that we need to eat meat.
Yeah.
Now we know that if we eat meat, that's going to bring our vibration down. But, not only that, but, and what about the suffering of the animal? They don't tell us any of that. They just tell us, oh yeah, you need meat, you need wheat, you need this, blah, 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 blah. But they don't give you any pointers as to, okay, well, if you don't want to eat meat, which is not good for you, you can eat these nuts, you can eat these beans, or you can have this so that your vibration will be lifted and then you don't have to consume flesh. Imagine we're eating flesh. So, cut your finger off and eat it. How well is that going to taste? It's not. Right. It's through this type of indoctrination and through fluoride in the water. They're doing everything possible to keep us down.
We protect what they have given us to adopt. So
that's right.
Like we feel it's our own thing, but we don't realize it's been ingrained in us for generations. Mm-hmm. So we like fight for what they have told us to do.
That's right.
So this brings me to my next point, which goes back to a little bit of what you guys are saying. Like, it's this is the time of the self-guru. It's not about politicians, teachers, and you're going to hear information from teachers, but the best teacher is like what you said, the teacher that tells you to listen to your own truth, right? Yeah. So it's like we lived in a world where we needed to be taught because we're at the Kali Yuga, we're in the dark ages for so long, and like not all of us were connected to this awareness, but we're exiting that now, and we're getting into a realm with this cosmic waves just hitting us with this awareness nonstop, and it's up to us individually to be able to connect to this. So this is the age of the self-guru, and we all need to really like be in alignment with what's true to us. And I would say not judge other people and their perspective, because we're all just humans making our own opinions up on things, And
we're all at a different level in our ascension. So you can't look at somebody and say, well, I know more than that guy, or that guy doesn't have it right. He just doesn't know what you know right now, or maybe he does know something that you don't. Look at the Dalai Lama now. Look at the guys in Tibet. They've been sitting around waiting for us to catch up for decades.
Yeah.
Right, the Hindus. Right, they've been waiting for us forever. A lot of the Chinese philosophers,
the Native Americans, they're literally like saying like when the blue star comes back and when this happens and the fifth world comes, they're like, hey, we're just waiting for you guys. We're here.
Yeah, when you guys grow up and we change the face of the world, then then you're going to find out the capital of this planet is probably Tibet.
Yeah, that's funny. All right, guys. So we got to start closing up, but I want to just go one more round, and maybe we could just close it off with some final thoughts about what's going on for you individually, your opinion on the what's going to happen in the next year, and just disclosure in general. So let's start with you, Omar.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, Neil, for inviting me to this show. Really had a good time and listening to everyone's opinions here. My personal thought is we are going to continue to get mixed signals from the authorities. They're going to give us clues with one hand, and then with the other, they're going to try to take it away. And it's all about the dollar. So, in my opinion, the people that have been lying to us for decades now, all of a sudden they expect us to believe them. By releasing these footages and such, and we know CNN bullshit, we know Fox bullshit, we know that they've been lying to us. So now all of a sudden they're releasing this footage and they expect me to believe them, which I don't. I don't believe them because these people have been lying to me for a long, long time. So what is it? All of a sudden they're going to stop lying to me and start giving me real information? I think not. I think like Miriam was saying, disclosure is up to every single one of us. It's a disclosure of the individual. Disclosure doesn't mean that ETs come down here and they're walking amongst us. Disclosure, in my opinion, is a self-betterment, self-education, and educating those around you. To me, that is disclosure, because with disclosure, we've disclosed the real information to us, and we've moved beyond the point of misinformation and the garbage that we learned in the old sausage factory. We've moved beyond that, and to me, that's what disclosure is. Disclosure to me has nothing to do with aliens, technology of any sort. Like I said, disclosure is self-betterment and self-education, because the more educated you are, the more we can direct our fellow humans in the direction that we took. I walk this path, you walk this path, Leo's walked this path. Maybe somebody that comes along hasn't walked this path, and because we're experienced, we can point them in the right direction. And from that point on, it's up to them. The journey is theirs.
Beautiful. Thank you, brother. Leonard.
Nice. That you guys, that's Omar. If you guys don't know who he is, which you probably should, go and take a look at his show. He's got Watchers Talk is his show. WatchersTalk.com is his website. He didn't plug himself. He's being humble. So I thought I'd plug it for you there, Omar. Because,
Thanks, Leo. I figured it's Neil's show, so I'll keep my
right?
Watchers
So,
Talk.
I know. I just, I got to throw it out there, buddy, because
Oh, for sure.
Don't know that. I'm sure they know, but I just got to do that. So, all of us are in. This is what we do, guys. This is what we're going to continue doing. In 2018, I'm going to be doing webinars. My show, I'm still doing the show, but when I'm kind of backing down on the show as much because I think the webinars are more important. The show I'll still do free, but not as often because we're going to be doing webinars. I think the show I'm going to start doing on Facebook and YouTube because just in case this whole Facebook thing starts going south because Facebook seems to be getting a little too much Big Brother-ish for some of us. So we'll see what goes on there. However, either way, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing, and I am getting into doing webinars. I have been working with Neil, actually, taking care of helping him with a couple here and there, but I'm going to be doing them on my own. So around Rising, you'll see we'll be doing webinars coming up in 2018 because this information needs to continue getting out there, and there's only a few of us that are doing it, and those who are doing it, we need to try and make sure that we are getting it out there as often as possible, working with each other and doing this and talking to the same peoples so that you guys see and across the world bringing in new people, which I've been doing, and also with showing the spiritual aspect of it and trying to pull in a bunch of mediums and psychics and that sort of stuff. And you'll see those. You guys have seen them on my show, because that way people can understand how all of this is encompassed with the aliens, because we already know, those of us who are in the know, we know if you break your conditioning, it won't take you long to know. And how do you do that? You got to, turn off everything that they're telling you, turn off those channels, turn off the television, go on the internet, look around, sift through the internet, because you're going to find positives and negatives. You're going to find lies and truth, but you're a human being and you can look at things and you can look through what, he said, she said, and what the truth is. We do it every day with our friends, our family, and our children. So we know how to do that. So the internet's the same way. You look at what I said, you look at what Omar said, you look at what Neil said, then you look at what the government's saying, and you take both those and you put them all together, and there's the real truth is in there. You can find it. So look out there, learn for yourselves. Like Neil said, self-empowerment, it's the self-guru is really the way things are going, and those people are starting to understand that. They're looking at their religions around the world and realizing that they're good for a purpose when you're in a certain place. But once you start to question and ask questions and you start to have your own thoughts, you're going to realize that they'll try and stifle you from having those thoughts. And that's when you start questioning, and you'll end up back here because you'll start working on your mind and your body and your soul on your own. And once you start doing that, you're going to find that the churches don't work. And because they don't want you there, and neither does politics, and neither does the American way. It doesn't work. The monetary system that we have is a lie. We don't need it. We've never needed it. It's all completely made up. That's another rabbit hole we didn't go down today, but it's made up. The whole thing is made up, and you're a slave to that debt, and you can get out of that debt just by not buying into their game. How do you do that? Education. Educate yourself, because we have the internet. We have smartphones. We have access to more education at the palm of our hands than any generation in the history of this world. And before they take control of it, all of us need to gain information so that we can stop them from taking complete control of it, and we can do what we're doing here, and we can ascend as a human race and understand and remember who we are, and to continue doing that. I know I'm kind of running on, Neil, but if you continue doing that, and you guys need to educate yourselves. So don't believe anything we've told you. Go out and try to prove me wrong. Try to say that Leo doesn't know what he's talking about. Neither does Neil, neither does Omar, neither does the doctor that was on, or Miriam. We don't know what we're talking about. We're just a bunch of crackpots. You go out there and you look that up. Then contact us and we'll put you on our show. Because what will happen is, if you go down that rabbit hole, we're going to put you on the show, and you're going to be one of those cases of, I didn't believe these guys until.
Just quickly,
thank you, Neil. Again, thank you, my friend, for us, to be able to have this platform. Anytime, like I said, this is what I do. That this is what you do. Bottom line is, we all have to work together. And like the Pope said, there's enough room in the universe for other races and God to still be God. Well, there's enough room in the universe for each and every one of us to be a self-guru and believe in ourselves and in aliens. So, and then the bottom line is, like you said, we got to get paid to survive on this planet right now until we get rid of this monetary system. Until then, we do need to make the bottom dollar the almighty dollar. So, but there's enough room for all of us as long as we work together.
I was just going to say, when you go on the internet, forget about TV. I haven't watched TV in years, and my mind is a lot more free. And every time I go out into my living room and I see the TV on, I always see nothing but bad news on there: murders, terrorism, violence, violence, war, and, you know, stay away from that. Go on YouTube, look up Portal to Ascension, subscribe, go to the videos, start at the very bottom, and
Yeah.
work your way up.
Yeah,
Watch that.
the full
watch it.
download right there.
That's right.
Take your time, like the doctor said at that point. Take your time.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's exactly what I've done. I've gone right down to the bottom of the page.
Nice.
And I've watched. You know, I think I'm halfway through. Right.
Wow.
So there's a lot more to come. I've watched a lot of videos. You know, Neil has just a ton of information. Like I said before. You know, so that will be the beginning of the Ascension. And on a second note, I forgot to say earlier, in January, I'm going to be rolling out a series. It's going to be, you know, a 10 to 12 part series that's aliens in the Quran, and that's going to be run by myself, co-hosted by Jeffrey Boyd Jr., and the speaker will be Farouk Ali. I had him on last night. We had a nice 3-hour discussion. So on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. for the next couple of months, we're going to run that series because there's just so much information that he has that we can't bring it out in just one show. Right. So I thought we'd do 1 hour, one and a half hour episodes over a course of a couple of months to bring all that information out, because we've been touching a lot on aliens in the Bible, but nobody talks about aliens in the Quran.
Yeah.
Right? So you know, so that's something that you know, we've decided to look into and bring to the public, because there's a lot of great information that's in the Quran that's privy to what we're doing, and especially to our discussion here this evening. So you know, you guys will want to tune in for that.
Awesome. So firstly, Leonard, I loved how you left off on a quote from the Pope. That's like freaking golden, dude. That's next level, right? So
right,
it was perfect. It was
like
perfect.
what he said, right? That's how I was like, you know, for those of you who are still there at Christianity, your own Pope said, look, there's enough room for aliens and God to still be God. So, you know, even the church is trying to get behind it because they know it can't be stopped.
Yes.
Yeah, man, seriously. And Omar, it's very interesting that you're doing the Quran thing, because I did a webinar, an all-day conference called The Truth of the Bible online conference like 6 months ago. And my intention, I was like, man, I wish I knew more about the Quran and ETs in the Quran, because I wanted to do an event on that. So I'm like extremely interested in all the information you're going to put out. So send it to me. I'll post it, blast it out to my people. And
maybe we can work this together, Neil.
Oh, that'd be cool, man. I'm open to that.
I'll start after the show here. I'll get Farouk on the line, and then 3-4 of us can have a discussion to where we can come up with a plan. Maybe one day I can hold a series on my end, another one on your end, another one on Leo's end, so that we can. That
sounds really cool. So let's talk tomorrow about that, because I have to head out right after this. But let's have a conversation about that. So let me just say this, guys, so we can close up. Omar and Leonard, I love you guys so much. The synergy that we have, all three of us together, and I think we should do this more often, MC together like this, you know? And just the information that you guys are putting out, you're really like taking to the next level, and your intention is so pure, because you're just doing it purely for the awareness. And that's why I resonate with you, and I want to continue working with both of you guys. So thank you for everything.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. Same here. I love you very much as well. The first time we met, when Leo introduced me to you, and we had that conference call, right from that time on, I was in love with you. I was like, man, I love this guy. I want to continue to work with this guy. And it's been a totally humbling experience. I like what you do, and I'm chasing your lead. In the beginning, I had a plan on what I was doing, but that plan wasn't very clear. And then ever since I met you, and I've been watching your Portal to Ascension, watching your webinars, it's like really, it's educated me and set a tempo for myself as to which path to follow. It's like I was saying earlier, you walked the path, I haven't. So, you've already got the experience. So, you know, who best to look at for advice than the person who's already.
Yeah, you're like our big brother, even though you're younger than us.
So I'm excited, guys, for 2018. We're going to do a lot together, and we're going to.
It's going to be big.
Yes. We just got to flood the internet with this information, man. That's really where it's at. Hit the road with it too.
Yeah, just hit the road, and just flood the whole the world, man. Not just
Clarence Mitchell. Clarence Mitchell is going to be doing that from Closer Encounters. He's going on the road here in the spring or summer, I believe, and he's going to take his show on the road. So
that's cool.
Very exciting.
So a lot to look forward to. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to close up right here, but let me just say I love you both so much. Thank you for being a part of this, and then we'll be in touch very soon, okay?
Thank you very much, brother. Have a great day.
Okay,
Thank
take care,
everybody
guys.
who's out there listening to us and didn't get to ask questions.
Next time.
Have a great day, Leo. I'll shoot you a message later, brother.
All right, brother.
Thank you, Neil.
Thanks, guys. Bye. Awesome, guys. So we have a lot to look forward to, you know, and this part of this disclosure that has just happened right now, just realize it is only one facet of what disclosure really represents. Disclosure of technology, of extraterrestrials, of advanced craft, disclosure of our spirituality, disclosure of our ancient history, cancer cure medication that can heal the planet, sound frequencies, and the list goes on and on and on. So there is so many levels of what is going to unfold, and this is just one part of it all. So all I can say is really just like we need to come together in 2018 and really show unity, because the energy of unity is much higher vibratory than the energy of exclusion. The inclusion is higher vibratory than exclusion, and that's what we have going for us. We're involving everybody. We have the collective consciousness on our side. So 2018, we're going to be doing the Disclosure Tour. We're going to be doing the Lost Civilizations Tour, which are 2 tours where we're going to be traveling the world with speakers like Graham Hancock, Tristan McCann, Brian Forster, Stephen Greer, Paula Harris, Grant Cameron, where we're taking this awareness on the road to cities in order to have these discussions and then also broadcast it online. By the end of next year, we're going to start popping up PTA meetings, Portal to Ascension meetings all over the world, monthly meetings going on in different cities. My wife and I are about to start traveling where we're going to go to different places in the world. We're going to stay there for a few months, create local events, have the events keep running where people get together to talk about ascended world, talk about disclosure, and then we're going to go off to the next community. So there's a lot to look forward to. I'm extremely excited, and I'm really blessed to be walking this path with all of you. So thank you all so much for being a part of this today. We love you very much. And this will be up on YouTube within a day. So if you want to check it back, you can do it there. All right, everybody, have a beautiful evening. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
NASA sometimes throws stuff out there that you go, really? That's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
But then that'll lead you down somewhere else. And like I said, one of the things I got in what's his name, Jeffrey, whatever his name is, he got some stuff too that just came out like a day and a half ago. And
yeah,
I was talking about it. So, you know, but the truth is, you and I both know the only way we're going to get true disclosure is you, me, and all the stuff that we know and what we're talking
seriously,
about.
man. Yeah, yeah.
You and I know what's really going on, but they just won't admit it.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? We know there's aliens. We know they've been talking to them. We know they reverse engineered all this shit. Everyone says, where's the proof? It's there, dude. Look for it. You just got to see it as there. They're telling us it's there. Right?
Yeah, this whole thing is getting weirder and weirder, bro. Like the stuff that's coming out is just freaking all over the place. So I'm excited to talk about it.
The death rolls. I really think that you know what I really think? I really think that you and what you've been doing with Stephen Greer for the past year and Michael Tellinger, I think you guys have put more pressure on this government than you realize.
Yeah, I think so.
I really do, bro. Because they went from ignoring stuff to like this weird shit where they're like in the death rolls of maybe we can still cover this up.
Well, the trippiest thing is that we did the event, the Cosmic False Flag with Stephen Greer, right? Millions and millions of views. But the crazy part is that everything he said in there is exactly what happened.
And it's exactly what's still happening.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like even the whole checking off of all the false flags with Korea, bro.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
So he called out Tom DeLonge. He said about his relationship with Tom DeLonge and how Tom DeLonge is no longer connected to him, and they split ways. And then he said they're going to try to create this fake alien invasion. And even I at the event was like, you really think they're going to do a Project Blooming hologram in the sky to show us some ETs attacking us? And now after what I just saw right now, I don't know what to believe anymore.
Right? Yeah. That's why, you know, when I first heard him say that, I thought, I don't know. But the weird thing was, J.D. Jeffrey had already talked about it, saying that Von Braun had brought that up back in the 40s, dude.
Hey, let's talk about this in 10 minutes. We're getting into too much information. We haven't even gone live on Facebook yet, bro.
Right? I know, huh? This is the stuff we need to talk about live on Facebook.